Welcome to Colorado Soul Stories, showcasing changemakers and creatives, past and present, who have helped to make Colorado not just a pretty place to behold, but a soulful place to be. I'm your host, Mama Jill, longtime Colorado resident, former teacher, and freelance journalist. Let's get started with our next episode. Okay, welcome back to Colorado Soul Stories. We're on the road in Nathrop, Colorado. We're actually re-recording a little bit with Ana Maria here. We recorded in a studio and lost the first half. So I'm at her beautiful house here near the woods in Nathrop, surrounded by her kitty cat, you might hear. And there's horses outside. So, you know, it's a house. It's real. Ana Maria Vasquez is a animal and nature multisensory intuitive. And her journey towards that started after some hard things happened to her, and she transformed that into a new life. Welcome, Ana Maria, and let's talk about your journey.
How fun is this to have these Colorado conversations?
Right?
I'm so grateful you're doing this.
Me too. I have animal. So there are animals here. There's a reason for that. Ana Maria loves animals, and they love her.
The animals are used to talking to us, the humans in my house. So
I love it. I love it. So sweet. It's the sweetest cat ever. What is his name?
that's Sammy. He's 16 years old.
Yeah. Gosh, you can't tell. He's very youthful. Okay. Let's start with you coming to Colorado.
I came to Colorado after I got my master's degree in communications and adult education. And I was headhunted to come work at Fort Lewis College. I guess it's university now, actually. Right. But I got to work there for 8-10 years. And then I got headhunted again by an independent bank in Durango. And then I kind of went back and forth between the two. And then the big, the recession in 2008 hit the country. It finally hit Durango in 2010. And that's when my big life tsunami happened. Yeah. I lost my job. I lost my home and my land. I could get another job somewhere, but I felt like, I did everything I was supposed to do and the way I was supposed to do it. And here I was still miserable. So I was stunned when I lost the job. And there I am, sitting in the ashes that used to be my life. And I'm like, if I have to do this again, I want to do it different. I want a deeper connection. I grew up huge connection with animals. Like we were saying, of course there's a lot of animals around here. I was the kid who, if there's a cat under the table in the kitchen, that's where I'm going to be, right? Or the dog in the backyard or whatever. I would have never said that I was an animal communicator because we didn't even have that word when I was growing up. Yeah. It wasn't like one of your choices on career day, that's for sure, right?
Should be.
Yeah, I know. But I knew I was so close to them. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I had heard from other spiritual teachers that we're all wired for that. We can do that. We're just too distracted, right, by the modern world. So I thought, well, then that's what I want to do. Yeah. So I had a spiritual teacher and I said, this is what I want to do. And she gave me an assignment and she said, for 30 days, I want you to go out to a tree, put your hands on it, and just be with this tree for 30 days, for 30 minutes. And actually, at this point, I had moved to Wisconsin because I had lost everything, right? I had to move in with my dad. Right. You're at this point where you are not expecting that to happen in your life, right? So that's why I feel like I am the poster child for all of this work because I didn't want to do those things, but it's how it unfolded. I thought she was full of crap, to be quite honest. I was like, she doesn't know what to do with me. Mm-hmm. She needs 30 days to come up with something, but I'm an overachiever and I'm a really good student. So I was like, I'm going to do this to the letter, if for no other reason than to come back at the end and say, I did it. It didn't work. What else have you got? Right. Yeah. And so for 3 weeks, I went out every day to the same tree, 30 minutes, felt very silly, very self-conscious. Like, what am I
Sure.
doing? And I didn't even know if I was like touching the tree in the inappropriate, right? I just didn't know what I was doing. So I really just spent a lot of time talking about that to the tree. And 3 weeks went by and nothing happened, right? There wasn't any hallucinating. There wasn't anything. And somewhere in that third week or so, at the end of that third week, I was in my house, in the living room, and I asked a rhetorical question, kind of talking to myself out loud. And I don't even remember what the question was, because what happened next was so amazing and changed the absolute course of my life. So I asked this question out loud, and I hear in an audible voice outside of my head the answer.
Wow.
And I was like, where did that come from? And it felt like it came from the tree, from outside. And so I stood up and went to the window, and I was like, was that you? And I heard again in a voice outside of my head, yes. And the first thing that I said was, I asked to talk to animals. I don't know what to do with a talking tree. And now I'm embarrassed, right? That was my answer, but that was my humanness. I didn't understand anything about the energy. I didn't understand any of this stuff. And it chuckled, the tree chuckled, and it said, the animals are coming. This is a recalibration process. And then I honestly thought I had a mental break, right? Because a tree is talking and I'm hearing it. We're not taught about that kind of stuff. And fortunately, right, from my time in higher education and things, I had a lot of really good connections to very good mental health professionals. And so I was like, okay, I can check that out after I listen to what this tree has to tell me. I take mental health very seriously, and I was also very curious. That started this ongoing situation where I would ask the tree questions that I didn't know the answer to, but I could find the answer to. Things like, what kind of tree are you, right? I didn't know. I had asked it, well, what should I call you? And it said, you can call me Ruby. And I thought, oh, that's sweet, Ruby. And then I said, okay, well, what kind of tree are you? And it said, well, I'm a red pine. And I was like, well, that's a little too on the nose, don't you think, Ruby the red pine? And so I got a friend who was a botanist and knew trees, just, so that there wouldn't be any questions. And sure enough, he thought I was silly, because he's like, this is a red pine. We have lots of them around here. I can't believe you don't know this, right? So I was grateful for that, and even more intrigued at this point. And so I didn't notice right away, but I eventually noticed that she was missing her canopy, and she was in between a bunch of other trees, so I couldn't tell right away. But one day when I was out there, I noticed she didn't have her canopy, and so I asked her, and she said very short words, big wind or big storm, strong wind, broke. And I was like, oh. But it also looked like, oddly, right, from my landlord's apartment, that you could, from his kitchen, it looked like it would be the perfect view. Like maybe someone did it intentionally. So I was in his kitchen one day and I asked him, what happened to that one tree? And he said almost word for word what Ruby had said to me. Oh my God, it was a big storm and this huge wind came through and then it was just broke. And so it was those pieces, right? And sure enough, the animals did come, and it was, I want to say, within 6 weeks after that first experience, the animals started showing up. I had taken my dogs out to go to the bathroom one night, and they were black dogs, and they went one way, and I turned around, and I almost tripped over another black dog, and I was like, what is going on? But there was nothing there, right? It was like, the way I describe it is like Star Wars, where Princess Leia is playing that video, and you see it like an overlay. So I'll like see things as an overlay. In this case, it was a smaller, medium-sized black dog with white on the tips of its ears and on its chest. And I was like, what was that? And I heard, again, another voice say, you'll know when you need to know. At this point, I was doing some life coaching with folks, trying to decide how am I going to do this? And then I was in a life coaching session, and I heard in my head, ask her about the dog. And I thought, I'm not going to ask her about the dog, right? She'll know I'm crazy. I'm still trying to prove I'm not crazy. And I kept getting the nudge, so I finally said, tell me about the medium-sized black dog with the white tips on the ears and the white on the chest. And it gets really quiet. And so I'm like, uh-oh, right? Like, she knows I'm crazy. It's up. Everybody knows now. And she starts crying. And this is actually, I'm very used to this reaction now, 15 years later, right? And she said, that's not possible. She said, that dog died 14 years ago. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you, but he was in my backyard last night, and let's see what he has to say. And we were able to share a message, and it meant a lot to her. And then, it was like a faucet was turned on, and the animals started coming through, and it's multi-sensory is like how I explained it, right? So I will sometimes hear things either in my mind's head or outside, or I'll see something in my mind's eye, or again on an overlay in the physical. Sometimes I'll feel something or just have a knowingness. A lot of times personalities will come through of the animals, so I can confirm, right? There'll be these times where even though I'm just in the room by myself, it'll feel like they've got their paw on my leg, or they're pushing on my arm, right? So every once in a while, something will show up ahead of time. I've had it here in the house where I get up in the morning because I work from home, and I'd walk in and I would see in a recliner like somebody sitting there, but I can tell it's not a real person. And then I look and they're like, I'm here for someone later, is what I'll hear in my head, right? It's all like you can understand why you would think you're crazy. So you really have to know that you're mentally sound, because that's true. And then the confirmation. I'm not trying to convince anyone. It's the confirmation that comes through, the information that I couldn't possibly know. Like with that gentleman, when I finally got into the session, I said, just so you know, your dad has been here all morning. And I said, there's a big man. He's a large man in overalls and a red flannel shirt. And he didn't want to be late, so he just sat in my living room. And she said, oh, my God, that's my dad. He's exactly like that. He would never want to be late, right? And he wouldn't want to impose, and he would just try and, want to stay out of the way. So it's really fascinating when those things happen. And again, it happens because everything is energy. So it doesn't matter if it's your dog or your dad, and it doesn't matter if they're embodied or they've crossed over, because everything is energy. And when we have these connections with loved ones, it never ends. And we always have access to that.
That's powerful. That is really powerful.
Yeah. And I'm, lived in smaller places. I had to not just rely on my local economy. Right. So I work globally. I have clients around the world. Wow. And it's wonderful. It's so rewarding because the animals, they reflect messages back to us through their behavior, through their physical issues that are going on, because we're so connected to them, and we've got these soul contracts. And they're so excited to be able to get the messages to their people. And the people are like, I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
How would you know?
Yeah. Wow. So how do people find you?
I'm fortunate that I get asked to speak on a lot of summits, a lot of online conferences. I have my own classes. I teach classes. I have private sessions. I have certification programs. My website is intentiontraining.com.
Right. And I'll put that on the website for this episode so people can find you. And there's also a book called Nature. Is that what it's called? The whole title?
Divine Experiences with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscapes.
That makes sense. It is long. So I feel like once you got going on this awareness, and this all started about 15 years ago, did you say?
Yeah, in 2026, I'll be celebrating 15 years in business professionally, right? I was doing it for a little bit before that as I was honing my skills, making sure I was mentally sound, things like that. But it really took off quick and big.
Wow, that is so cool. Since I scheduled this interview, I mentioned what you do. And so many people have just been, oh, yeah, I know an animal intuitive, or I use animal. And I'm like, okay, cool. And we talked earlier about how Colorado is a place that might be a little bit more open-minded about things like that. How has the landscape here contributed, would you say?
Well, I feel like folks who are drawn to Colorado, whether they were born here and stay or whether they, migrate here, they have this connection to the outdoors. They want to be outdoors, and or the wildlife, right? Or, we have the joke in Salida that you show up and you get a bike and a dog, right? Like they hand it out at the edge of the city. So it's that piece. People are already connected to nature. I get this a lot where people come up and they're like, you're never going to believe this. And they're like, okay, well, maybe you'll believe it. But they had this amazing experience with a bush when they were out jogging or they were mountain biking and they heard a tree talk and they're like, is that possible? And I'm like, oh, it's possible.
Yeah.
And so, people seem to just be more open because of that connection. They know already that being connected with the natural world makes them feel better. And it's important, right? Like, there are biological things that happen. There's that whole movement grounding, right? Or earthing, where you put your bare feet or your bare hands either on the ground or on a tree, and you're receiving negative ions, right? They know that negative ions are released, and the way that atoms in our body work, they have to have balance. And when we're in synthetic environments, we get unbalanced. And all of these electronic, I'm pointing to the TV, I'm pointing to the console, I'm pointing to all of the electronics, right? They are pulling from the cells in our body because they want those negative electrons to balance themselves. It's not anything bad or nefarious. It's just how things work. And so our body is the biggest organic thing that any of these things can pull from. So it's important that we are continually replenishing that. And you do that by going outside at least 5 minutes, right? They're saying 20 minutes, but the more that you can do it, and most people probably recognize this, we feel brilliant when we're out in the woods. And I guarantee you it has more to do with us remembering, right? Coming back to our center, remembering who we truly be, remembering that we're connected to everything. And so there are actually like physical things that are happening to us that don't happen to us if we don't spend time outside. And so moving from nature being this beautiful backdrop to an actual ally, right, that you're connecting with, it makes a difference.
I wonder, we all work in front of computers, and some people longer than others. Those people need even more.
The term is called EMFs, right? Electromagnetic frequencies. And so they're coming out at you all of the time. Again, I've been fortunate to have all these different coaches and mentors that aren't fear-based. They always come from love. And so they're always like, you can do whatever you want, but have an exit strategy, right? So if you're going to sit in front of your computer all day, what are you going to do at the beginning of the day? What are you going to do at the end of the day, right? Can you get outside? Can you take a 5-minute break and just stand outside? What are the things that you're going to do?
That's a good thing to really
mitigate
consciously think about that. And of course, I think of my husband, who's a very hard worker, but sometimes he's, it's like almost 12 hours sometimes.
Yes.
And I beg him to get outside. If he could incorporate that into a routine. He loves outside, don't get me wrong, but he's just a hard worker. I'll go home and suggest that.
Even just standing still. 5 minutes, bare feet on the ground, or if people can't do that, right? Because it does get cold here in the winter, then bare hands on a tree, like the trunk of a tree. Yep, because you have to have touch. There's all these on the bottom of your feet. There are between 50 to 80,000 receptors. And that's why we put things like oils and things on our feet, because it's taken up. Right? Reflexology happens on the soles of our feet. This is a big deal. And our hands too. We don't have as many in our hands, but it's a good substitute if you can't do it. Another thing is to sit on a rock, because, you look at your spinal column, right? That is all just an information superhighway. That's your wiring. Wow. And then you've got your tailbone. And when your tailbone comes into proximity with that rock. Now, rocks are electromagnetic beings, really. They're putting out energy and they're pulling it in. And when you're in their energy field, right, which is typically 4 times the diameter of the rock, you are receiving that energy. This is a big deal. You're getting a huge boost. And if you're sitting on it, you're receiving that information. It's huge. It's fast. We move through our life so asleep, not realizing all the amazing things that are happening, the energy exchanges that are happening. And when we're tuned into it, you see more magic, right? Like so much more amazingness is not missed.
Yeah. We're pausing here to introduce our first sponsor of the podcast. I was at the Salida Farmers Market the other day and discovered a new and healthy product for our doggies, Doggurt. Doggurt, a dog frozen yogurt, is created by founder and Salida resident Amanda Colanino. Here she is now to tell you more.
Hi, everybody. I developed Doggurt after realizing that I didn't recognize most of the ingredients on the labels of my dog's food. That inspired me to create a treat for my dogs that I could feel good about. Doggart is made fresh in Salida, Colorado with human-grade ingredients to mix up 6 pup-approved flavors. Doggart is high in calcium and protein with no sugars, fillers, or preservatives added. Yogurt, the base ingredient, contains live active cultures, providing our doggies with those benefits of probiotics, helping them to maintain optimal digestion. The activity of licking a Doggart promotes brain health and the release of pleasure-causing endorphins, resulting in a sense of comfort in dogs. To find a retailer near you, go to doggart.com. That's DOGGURT.com.
And Amanda, thanks for being one of Colorado Soul Stories' first sponsors. Dun, dun, dun. So, her partner is not here right now, but I love the story. You don't have to tell the whole details, but that was a bit of a magical experience for you also. And do you see that as connected to your whole kind of journey?
Absolutely, okay. Right? Like that's the thing. It's the piece about you connect to your intuitive abilities because it allows you to live a more guided life. And that's exactly what happened, right? Like I was in the listening. Where was I going to move back to when it was time for me to come back to Colorado? Because I knew I was coming back, right? And so I ended up in Crestone. And one of my friends had called me on it. She's like, so you moved to this tiny, tiny little remote mountain town. Anyone who knows Crestone, right? A couple hundred people tops. In the summer, right? We've got more people, but it's not a lot. And she said, you said you wanted to meet your partner. How are you going to do that in this tiny little town? And I said, well, I don't think he probably lives there, but I think we're going to end up being in the same places. Right. And one of the things that I do is I work on being an intentional manifester in my life because we don't even understand how powerful we are as energetic beings. We are electromagnetic beings, meaning we put out signals and we attract signals. So we want to be intentional about what we're putting out there. So I had been being intentional. I wanted to call in my beloved, and these were the traits. These were the things that I wanted to do with my partner. Right. So I had a list. Well, it turns out at the same time, my partner, I call him my Zen cowboy, he was doing the same thing. He was making a list of things that were important for him in the woman that was going to be in his life that he was trying to call in. And so one afternoon, of course I fell in with the musicians and the artists in Crestone. Just as how I'm wired. And so the band, the Blue Rooster out of Crestone, was going to be playing in Salida, but I got to go over the pass, right? Over, Poncha Pass. And I thought, I don't know. That's going to be a lot of work. And I kept getting the nudge, right? Hearing the voices, like, just go. It'll be fun. And so I decided, well, actually what happened was one of the band members was having a birthday and one of the wives was making a chocolate cake. And I'm very food motivated, very much like a lot of my clients, I guess, right? Always treat motivated. And so I thought, well, I could drive over the pass for chocolate cake. So I came to Salida. They were playing at the boathouse for anyone who knows Salida. Yeah. He was dancing with one of our neighbors, who happens to be one of our neighbors now, and I was dancing with one of the band members' wives, and we danced right into each other. Oh. And he said, hello, and I said hello. And normally, right, like my thing is if you mention you're an animal communicator, people weed themselves out right away. They're either going to say something snarky or kind of condescending or, they're going to be really weird. And so I said that and he just stopped and said, oh my goodness, I love animals. And I have a huge connection with animals. And as I say, the rest is history, right? 10 years later. And it was that part about both of us consciously manifesting and right. Everything is energy. What are you going to do with the energy around you?
The part that is also cute that he tells it was love at first sight for him. Love at first sight, Jill. That's what it was. Let me tell you about it.
That does sound like him very much so.
Very sweet, very sweet. And then you end up, coming together and he moves you out to his property, which we're at right now. How many acres do you have?
40.
Wow. Yeah. Really pretty spot here. I'm not going to say exactly where it is, but wonderful mountain views and right by the forest. And I've never met such friendly animals as I have met here. So this is also where pieces of your journey came into play, like the medicine wheel.
Yeah. This piece about, earth-based practices, right? Because the earth helps us remember, right, who we are, why we're here, this deeper connection piece. And indigenous folks around the world have had that close connection. All of us, if we go back far enough in our lineages, we were tribal people, sitting around fires, being outside, being connected to the natural world. And when you're living in the natural world in that way, you have to pay attention to the signs and symbols because it's imperative for your survival. And one of the earth-based practices that we found around the world, it's not just North American based, are medicine wheels. Yeah. And they are a collection of stones. Typically they start with the 4 directional stones. And it really is this physical piece of working on the land that reminds you that you're connected here, you're connected above. I was pointing to my heart. Sorry. Yeah. I forget sometimes on audios that we're connected to everything, and that there really is no difference between us. And so with those medicine wheels, you start with the directional stones, right? You find the east, the west, the north, and the south markers, and you put down bigger stones. Then you fill them in with smaller stones, and each stone can correlate with a time of year or the planet or a plant or an animal. They all have very different significance. And again, it's going to depend on what tribal affiliation you have or your lineage, what you've learned. Yeah. And so in my teachings, in my trainings, I had initiations working with the medicine wheel. And so I would oftentimes just kind of create my own medicine wheel with 4 directional stones, whether it was on my desk or just outside, but just, you know, to connect with and go through the process of connecting with each direction and the elements and all of those pieces. So I had been living here on the land, I don't know, a couple of years probably at that point, and I'd been walking the land every day, right, as part of my own personal practice. And one day I came to a clearing in the trees, and I was like, oh, this wants to be a medicine wheel. And so I shared it with my partner, and he was like, oh, yeah, that feels really good. So he started collecting stones like right away. I was very impressed. Like I would sit, you know, doing my work, and I would watch him with a wheelbarrow go by with all these barrels of stones. And so he got them all out there, and he said, okay, it's time to lay the directional stones. And you do it very ceremoniously, right? Because this is a ritual. This is very special. You're connecting with the actual energy, the entity of the direction of the east and the direction of the north. And, you know, each one has its own energy, and it correlates with different seasons of our lives and even day, time of day and all of this. So we're getting ready to do this. And I look down, and I'm starting in the east, and there's already a big stone in the ground in the direction of the east. So then I start like looking around, and I look, and there's one in the south, and there's one in the west, and there's one in the north. And I'm like, how did I not see that? I mean, you know, there's a little growth and stuff. And so I got the compass out, and sure enough, it's only a few degrees off, which means at some point it was set. And we do know the San Isabel National Forest, which is what we back up against, was an old Ute trail. They would go to Mount Princeton, right? And then the hunting grounds in this area. So it makes a lot of sense that it would have been. I've been in communication with some different chiefs of different tribes to ask them. It wasn't a written down. It's not like it would be cataloged. Oh yeah, in Nathrop, it's this, right? But everything that they asked me and that I talked to them with seems to have pointed to that. And so we reactivated it, we maintain that, and we use it in our practice. And it's a very sacred, you know, it's a church, right? And you need to treat it as such, just like if you go into a cathedral or a temple or, you know, something to that effect. And so right in the book, I tell the story because it's a phenomenal story. But before I did that, because my publisher had asked me, you know, can we tell the medicine wheel story? And I said, I don't know if I can, right? I know part of the story is mine to tell, but I don't know. It's bigger. This was handed down. I need to go be with it. So I was in meditation for multiple days about that and talking, and I walked the wheel each day. And on the last day that I did it, I finished and I sat down on a bench that we have next to it. And these deer walked through on the north side. And at this point, my Great Dane Astro was with me. He didn't move. His eyes were trained on him. The deer were trained on us, and it was this huge buck and a doe. And energetically and symbolically, metaphysically, deer have to do with a gentle luring to new adventures and traditional ways. And so I knew right away this was about sharing, right? This is a new adventure, get it out there and share the traditional ways. Then there was this Clark's nutcracker. It's a big gray seed eating bird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these birds are phenomenal. They will plant 30 to 50,000 seeds throughout the summer. And they find almost all of them. They have an over 90% rate. I don't know who studies this, but they have over 90%. And that energy and their energy, again, the symbology has to do with ancient wisdom being uncovered again. And so I knew, right? Like, you start piecing these together and you get the puzzle that comes together that says, yes, it's time to share the ancient wisdom.
And of course, you're practiced in being aware. There was a woman visiting me when we had our interview scheduled. I think we were getting together the next day, and I only saw her for a couple of hours, but she shared with me that she was pursuing these probably coincidences, some people might call them. Certain numbers were coming up for her, but she was paying attention and she was trying to make sense of it all. And I just wanted to validate that piece that we all often have these serendipitous, coincidental things. We talk with our friends about this, and we've got a group that we can kind of go, yeah, that's cool. It's not just for us a coincidence. It's something more, and we're trying to pay attention. And what I like about your practice when you're supporting other people is that you let them own their experiences, and you help them maybe notice, yes, that might be a symbol, and that's your specifics.
Your intuitive backpack. Yes. I help you unpack your intuitive backpack, right? We all know, all of us in Colorado know what it's like to have a backpack on and be like, where is my granola bar, right? Oh, shoot, it's at the bottom, right? Or my water, or my map, right? I need to know where I'm going. And when you have a hiking partner, right, they can turn you around, dig in the bag. Here's your flashlight, here's your water, here's your map, eat your granola bar, right? And it just makes it easier. It's not that they're doing the hike for you, but you're helping them get the tools. And that's exactly it, because the way that our intuition works is it works with our subconscious mind, which doesn't have language. And so it's colors and feelings and thoughts and emotions, right? And so what will happen is something will be trying to get our attention, right? And it will hit that subconscious side of the brain. And then the analytical brain can help us connect the dots. Except for most of us, what happens is the intuitive side shows up and the analytical side shows up like a bouncer. And it's like, who is that? Cite your source. Where'd you get that information? And the intuitive side goes, ah, and runs away. So we have to train our brain to watch for that, right? So I know, right, when a deer shows up, I know what it means for me, right? I've worked with them enough. They've come up in other people's sessions. And so it's that piece about helping people tune in, because all of us are wired for this, but we're wired a little bit differently, right? Some people are more clairvoyant. They see things more. Some people hear more. Some people feel things more. I definitely work with people that are, one of those. Mine comes through typically all of them and usually simultaneously. If I sit and dissect it, I can say, okay, this knowingness dropped in first, then I saw that. And then and I really have to discern, but that's fine, right? But for most of us, it's all happening concurrently. It's the small voice. It's the quiet one. The one that's like, me, look at me. That's not it. Thank you. Stand over there. Now let me feel in. And it's a very small nudge. And that's why it's subtle energy. So we have to learn how to not be distracted and pay attention, right? Like most of the time when I'm just going through my day, right, I'm distracted like everybody else. But when I'm in a session, right? Like I have sat down, I've done breathing, maybe I'm using essential oils, maybe I've got some crystals, right?
You kind of prepare.
Yes, to slow my mind down so that I can be aware.
She's been using this word unfolding, and I actually mentioned you in a couple other interviews, so your name comes up when we're talking about listening and paying attention. Sometimes when we're trying hard, it is a form of distraction.
Yes.
And I had a really tough night last night. It was the night before the podcast launch, right? And something was going wrong. And I was in tears. I couldn't figure it out. And I actually called my son, and he called me down. He told me all the things I used to tell him. So we can do that for each other now. But I thought about stuff you and I talked about, taking a deep breath and just being more present and take a few steps back. And that unfolding word came into my head, and I'm like, I just got to go to bed and let it go. And then everything was all right the next morning, which was magic to me, I must say. And I said a lot of grateful things and kind of felt very wondrous about that and happy.
Yeah.
But my conversations with you lately definitely helped me with that.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I always look at it like a big cosmic scavenger hunt, right? We get one piece and we don't know the whole thing. We can't see the whole puzzle, but we're given one piece, and what are we going to do with that, right? Are we going to feel into it? Or are we going to be like, meh, whatever, right? And then we'll get another piece, right? And that is the unfolding, right?
Yeah.
That next piece. One of the things that was taught to me, channeled through a tree, was a 3-step process. And so the first thing is, what's up, right? It's not working. The technology is not working, and it needs to be working. There's a timeline here. I have contractual obligations, whatever it is. That's step 1. Step 2, how do you feel about it? Because emotion are energies in motion. And that's important. That energy is telling you something. So I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm angry, I want to quit. Like any of the emotions, just let them come up. We spend so much time trying to push them down. And it's like, you know, that old game whack-a-mole where you'd like hit the little mole comes up, you hit him. This is very violent, and I wish we had a different example, but it's what we got. And then you hit him, and then he pops up somewhere else. That's what happens with energy if we don't deal with it. So we do the first step, what's up? Second step, this is how I feel about it. And the third step allows us to create a pivot point, and it creates a shift in the trajectory of our energy. So even though that's happening, even though I can't get the tech to work, and even though I can't stop crying about it, that's not my ultimate truth, right? This is bigger than me. My truth, this is little and stupid. Right. I can breathe, right? Yeah. And then when we shift into gratitude, our whole vibration changes. Yeah. As we do that and we shift the energy, that allows a new attraction to come in, right? So you go to bed, you're like, there's nothing I can do anyway. Yes. And it can shift, right? When we're on it so tight, it can't move.
Tight. That's good advice.
Well, right. And the thing is we're energetic beings. We move through our day, and then we get hit with energy. And what we try and do is contract around it, right? If I can make the energy smaller and more manageable is what we're thinking without thinking it, right? But that's not it. We need to expand around it so it can flow through. Okay. Right? But we want to control it and fix it, and we can't, right? Yeah. It's just a human condition. Nothing that we do is wrong. Right. Some of it is just more effective than other things.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's been a joy to be in Ana Maria's surroundings. It's very welcoming and cozy and filled with animals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Jill. This is great.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your evening.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening. I appreciate each and every listener, whether you listen to an occasional episode or you have signed on for the whole thing. You are a kindred spirit who appreciates what I'm trying to do here. And FYI, I do this completely by myself. It has not been an easy learning curve, but I really wanted to do it, and I had a passion involved, and so I've learned the technology for the most part. It's kind of ongoing, but I will say, if you really do like the podcast, it costs nothing to subscribe or to download and give us a nice rating. That's a great way to appreciate it. You can also go to my website, Jill Karsten's Writer /Colorado Soul Stories, where you can sign up for newsletters if you want information on future podcasts, or if you'd like to be a paid subscriber, I will be offering exclusive content, and we are working on some subscriber events with people that I have interviewed, with musicians I've interviewed. We're going to have a few parties as time goes on, so information on that will be on the website. In the meantime, thanks, and whatever you do, wherever you are in the state, go out and make Colorado a more soulful place to be. See you next time.